Welcome to The Debrief, where we talk with the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the headlines they're covering this week and where the story's going next. I'm Sarah Westwood, and I'm here today with senior columnist Tim Carney. And Tim, let's talk about Sarah Bloom Raskin. She is the Biden administration's nominee to be the top banking regulator at the Federal Reserve. Republicans are really concerned about her views. Why are they so worried?
She's made it clear that she thinks that federal banking regulators shouldn't just try to keep banks safe and sound, but should use their pressure to try to get banks to pull money out of doing business with fossil fuels, oil, gas, coal. And so the idea is not just that these industries would suffer, but that then the federal banking regulation mechanism would just be turned to sort of trying to stop perfectly legal activities that Democrats don't like. What would be next? Would it be gun manufacturers? Would it be religious organizations? And so she has explicitly said before her nomination, the regulators should try to pull the banks out of doing business with these companies. But now she's saying she's not going to do it, but the Republicans don't quite believe her.
So in addition to those left-wing views, she's also coming under scrutiny for her rather lucrative ties to this private firm that was then treated favorably by the Federal Reserve. Tell us about that.
That's right. So Sarah Bloom Raskin has passed through the revolving door a few times. She was a banking committee staff for the 1990s, left for private industry, then went back in. President Obama put her on the Federal Reserve and then in the Treasury Department. When she left there, she landed on the boards of a handful of companies, one of which is called Reserve Trust, and its sort of selling point is it's a payment system. It helps one company pay another, but it has direct access, like a bank would, to the Federal Reserve's master account. How did they get that? Well, it turns out Sarah Bloom Raskin, when she was on the board of Reserve Trust, made a call to her former employer, the Federal Reserve, and said, hey, can you give these guys special access to the master account? And they paid her in stock, which she then sold for $1.5 million. So it's sort of a self-enriching, revolving door story that supposedly people like Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren disagree with that sort of activity, but they love Sarah Bloom Raskin.
Yeah, of course. And finally, generally speaking, there's been some criticism directed at the Biden administration because President Biden took so long to pick just a range of top Federal Reserve nominees. Do you think that will affect the Fed's ability to sort of now pivot and finally address inflation?
Yeah, well, it's been interesting because the Fed hasn't had to deal with inflation for so long, but inflation is the number one issue. It's the number one issue for American families, and it's the number one issue for Joe Biden. And yet he waits a year into his presidency to nominate Sarah Bloom Raskin. He picks this woman who has this baggage and that will slow down her nomination. And so all of these things, as he's trying to say, I want to fight inflation, it's really getting in his way that he's sort of throwing roadblocks in front of himself as far as putting new members on the Fed.
Well, Tim, thank you so much for being here today. You can get more writing from Tim and the rest of the commentary team at WashingtonExaminer.com.